All right, what is going on, everyone? And welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast as we are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest offseason news and rumors in New York Mets land. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for new episodes of our show that are recorded live regularly every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, all off season long. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the live chat right now, we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all that great stuff. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored, you're just being starred throughout the show. We'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for some more content over there. For our audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes that go up at 9 a.m. the following day of recording. Also, make sure to give us a 5-star review. It would be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 180 of our show. And let's just say we have a lot to get into, with our previous episode being 2 weeks ago. Last Thursday, obviously, was Thanksgiving, so we weren't going to go live for Thanksgiving. Didn't really make any sense. Everybody should be with family. Instead of talking about the New York Mets, even though I'm sure maybe it is a topic of discussion at your house, at the dinner table, if you're all Mets fans and you're all worried about what is going to go on for this offseason. Either way, it is just me today, so I say what I say. So I will say what I usually say when I'm here solo. If I'm your least favorite co-host, that's rough. You're going to have a rough hour and a half, 2 hours. But either way, we've got plenty to get into, plenty to catch up on, plenty to talk about these certain rumors that have been going around as we get closer and closer to the winter meetings, which is going to be the big glut of the offseason, where news flows in for 4 straight days. Sometimes it's more active than it is, but we do have plenty of different avenues, especially in the league, not even just with the Mets, of where will some of these big name free agents end up going. And then there's also a lot, and I mean a lot, and we're going to get into some of it later, of trade opportunities, either in the starting pitching market or position players or guys on contract years who probably could get picked up. Obviously, the first big trade was done by the Mets, and we're going to get into that in a second. Obviously, we all know what it is. It's been pretty much known by now for like 2 weeks, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that combination of what this is an outlook for this team. Obviously, we'll see what happens, but however, let's say hello to some of you guys in the chat here. We have BBA coming in here saying we need a big move tonight. I'm bored. I'm sure plenty of Mets fans are bored, but I think they've done a lot more than I think we usually see them before the winter meeting starts. So they've definitely been proactive in that way, and they've made 2 really big impactful moves, which we will obviously go over today, saying, the Mets have to wait until the winter meetings. That usually is how it is. Obviously, saying I'm late as well. It's whatever. I think I was like maybe a minute or 2 late. It happens, when you schedule things. Sometimes you're a minute or 2, or maybe 30 minutes late. We've delayed a few shows recently, so I apologize for that. Either way, hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Hope everybody had a great Black Friday as well. We actually posted a video about some relievers that the Mets should pursue. There is a reliever that they ended up signing a few days ago that we were going to get into. Obviously, everybody knows all of these pieces, unless you do not follow Mets news and you only get the Mets news from Mets Weekly, and you should. That should be the only platform that you go to. If Mets Weekly is not on, you should just be shutting off your phone. That's it. That's all you should do. You should have your phone shut off until Mets Weekly comes on. And those are the only time when you have device privileges. I'm making that up, but we're just going to pretend like that's true, okay? Either way, plenty to get into. Like I just said, we had so many either moves, news, rumors flow in and out that we can't even really keep up with. And when you have 2 weeks in between shows, it's really, really hard to keep up with what is relevant and what is not. I had about, I don't know, maybe 5 different drafts of this episode from the beginning to back in Thanksgiving to now. So, I mean, there is just plenty of stuff to go over, obviously. Plenty of different news stories going out. We're going to get into all of it. And first, I want to go into the most obvious and kind of review the best as we can of, obviously, the Marcus Semien acquisition in exchange for Brandon Nimmo, longtime Met, going to Texas. We just saw today that he's going to be wearing number 24 for the Texas Rangers, which is very unsettling. I'm not going to lie. I don't like seeing Nimmo in 24. I like seeing him in 9, but it's whatever. I guess that was the only number available. I'm not sure if there's anybody in Texas or a number that's retired that has number 9, but I'm used to Brandon Nimmo as number 9. I'm also used to Brandon Nimmo being a Met, but he's no longer a Met. And for the good of the team, obviously, with them bringing in Marcus Semien. And I do want to do a little bit of a rundown of Marcus Semien because I think that there was a little bit of a peculiar sense for Mets fans, obviously, with them trading off a aging piece for someone who's older and also is making maybe a little bit more money than Brandon Nimmo annually. But it's more of just how it kind of fits into the Mets mold of improving from 2025. And when you plug in stats like this from Marcus Semien, maybe at face value you don't see it, but I will be breaking down some of the aspects as to why this makes sense for this Mets team. And I'm not going to just say it just to cope and say that, well, this Mets team just got completely better. But no, the Mets deficiencies got better, and I'll get into that as to why. So an internal shakeup for this Mets team, obviously Brandon Nimmo being a core member of this team for many, many years. I mean, he was a first-round pick, back in 2011 for this team, back when Sandy was the general, back when Sandy Balderson was the general manager the first time. But as you see for Marcus Semien, definitely had a down year. 89 weighted runs created plus, only 15 home runs, 32 extra base hits. He slashed 230, 305, 364. Obviously, again, 35 years old, playing second base, 6 foot, 195, former 6th round pick by the White Sox back in 2011. He has been in the league for almost 12 years now. And he obviously has 3 years left on his deal, worth over $72 million of a 7-year contract that he signed with Texas. And the Mets will be retaining $6 million through 2030, retaining salary for Brandon Nimmo. They will be paying him $2 million this year, and then for the last 4 years, it will be $1 million each in retained salary. So for those of you who want to know what the books are for that, the Mets will be taking on $24 million a year for Marcus Semien for the next 3 years, and then there will be just retained money that comes off of the books. Marcus Semien, down year with the bat last year, obviously did not hit the ball fairly hard. But, however, we did still see a decent amount of quality of contact that could be possibly salvageable offensively. Why? Because he does pull a lot of fly balls. In fact, he is a right-handed hitter, and not to mention of a guy with his certain bat speed as well, which has also gone down, who pulls the ball more than possibly anybody of that certain realm of bat speed. So that is somewhat encouraging that those are hitting tools that could be somewhat salvageable. He doesn't chase as much, makes a decent amount of contact, but one of the main parts to this is the durability. Now, he had 5 consecutive seasons if you exclude, obviously, 2020. So dating back to 2019, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 160-plus games played. They obviously play 162, so you can vary between the 161 or whatever. Very durable. However, he did end up having a injury that was a freak injury of him fouling a ball off of his left foot, which was labeled a left foot contusion. And I think he had to have a small procedure on it, but he did miss 35 games towards the middle-ish range of the season. However, it seems like he is notoriously, as of right now, is 100% healthy, should be ready to go for spring training. He's been durable throughout his entire career. Now, the main thing that I think loses a little bit focus, because obviously at face value, we know that Marcus Semien, his bat likely is on the decline. I think that there's a few characteristics that maybe be salvageable for him, and maybe with this new coaching staff, they could find a way to tap into something and kind of go into that median of what you were possibly getting from either Brandon Nimmo or some of these other guys in the bottom part of the lineup. However, we'll see what happens there. But the main part of this that is the most redeeming is obviously the defense. This is more of a defensive move, which is definitely much needed. 7 outs above average in the 92nd percentile at second base. Not a strong arm, but usually the weakest arms are at first base and at second base, as, you know, a la Pete Alonso that we have seen for many, many years. Either way, he also still gives you well above average speed, 21st percentile in sprint speed. So it's basically just filling in those gaps that the Mets have had shortcomings with. And that's the main reason as to why you bring in a guy like Marcus Semien. You may say that maybe this contract is definitely not worth these in the margins types pieces of value. That may be true. However, when you're talking about certain fit on this team, the Mets lineup is very left-handed heavy. We know that it is. Marcus Semien is a right-handed bat. Pulls a lot of fly balls, which is a prototype that we have talked about a lot with guys like Snitker, Troy Snitker, their new hitting coach that will be coming in, which was something that they definitely preached and sent a message to when he was in the Astros organization for all of those years. Then they also had Jeff Albert as well, who under Jeff Albert, the Cardinals were, you know, top flight in high pull fly ball rate. So this could be a prototype that Albert and Snitker really like as to where it is a perfect fit to where they can maximize this the best. Marcus Semien even said publicly during his press conference when he was reintroduced, he said that I am excited to work with the new hitting coaches as well to kind of get me back into that MVP level. Will he get back to that MVP level? Probably not. It probably will not happen because he is going to be 35, 36, 37 for the rest of his, at least Mets tenure, as far as we know. However, he also has he also has had conversations already with them, which is very, very good to hear, considering he has been a Met for 2 weeks now. And he said that for his press conference, I don't know, a few years ago, a few weeks ago, a few days after the trade obviously happened in his press conference when the trade was made official. Now, here's the thing. I understand Mets fans being upset about Brandon Nimmo going. I get it. I like Brandon Nimmo too. I think Brandon Nimmo is a great guy. I think he's one of the most likable guys in the league. However, when you're talking about a team that failed as much as they have, when you're talking about a team that has they have gone below expectations 4 times in the last 5 seasons, you have to make a shakeup. And when you look at Brandon Nimmo, the bat has regressed over these last 2 seasons. We know that there is going to be health concerns that is going to deteriorate his ability on the field. And with him being signed for 5 more years, the Mets had to look to possibly move that contract. Now, you guys know publicly on here, if you have watched our show for the past, months, I said it's almost impossible to move Brandon Nimmo. almost impossible to possibly do that. And that is because of the no trade clause, because of him having control through 2030. It had nothing to do with me. Oh, well, I want to hold on to Brandon Nimmo. I don't want to hold on to that contract. I don't think anybody does. And we even said it day one when he signed that contract years ago. The contract is terrible. The AAV is affordable for the certain 3 to 4 win player that he is fully healthy. However, the term, 8 years to Brandon Nimmo, I mean, come on. I don't think anybody is voluntarily doing that unless there is somebody internally that values him. And the Mets obviously valued him. He was a big part to this franchise for more than a decade. He's been in this organization for a long time, drafted out of high school, but now he's 32 years old. And the deteriorating health, the deteriorating abilities were noticeable over these last 2 seasons. They definitely were. I still think that there is a little bit left in that bat. I've said it already. But his defense in left field, I mean, we know that arm is a liability. And we know that as he continues to get deeper and deeper into his 30s, his lower half is going to give out on him. Eventually will. We've already seen issues with his lower half. The plantar fasciitis. We have seen hamstring issues with him. We've seen ding-ups with Brandon Nimmo. And even though he has been relatively healthy, it's basically trying to catch a disaster before it happens. Catch an explosion before it happens. Because we know that there was always health concerns about Brandon Nimmo. And I wish Brandon Nimmo the best. In Texas, he reunites with Jacob deGrom. So it seemed like there was a narrative that was being pushed around about Brandon Nimmo, and maybe there's some unhappiness about things in the clubhouse, and we'll get into the clubhouse stuff later on about that report that came out, which was just nuts. We'll get into all of those types of details. But when you talk about Brandon Nimmo's production, and you talk about the trajectory that this is on, it was not worth locking down an outfield corner spot, especially when you have a very crowded group of position players, a crowded group of prospects, or also a lot of options on the free agent market you could possibly bring in. We've talked about Cody Bellinger already. Kyle Tucker seems like something that is more of a pipe dream for Mets fans. I know that a lot of people want Kyle Tucker, but he's obviously going to be in high demand, and he's going to definitely have a big market. And I don't think the Mets want to shell out another contract for another left-handed bat. There's other options, other trade options as well to make the team better. This trade was not about trading production for production. This trade was about making the team better in tools, closing off the deficiencies that this team has. As much as I love Brandon Nimmo, as much as I think Brandon Nimmo has had a great Mets career, and I think that if he was a little bit healthier, maybe we would be talking about number 9 going into the Raptors, because he has been here for a long time. But in reality, we know that Brandon Nimmo's lower half is deteriorating. Whether you're talking about the plantar fasciitis or not, he is going into his 30s. He's not going to give you the plus speed that Marcus Semien can give you. He is not going to give you a strong arm in left field. He is not going to give you the ability to pull fly balls. He is not walking as much as he used to. He's a lot different of a player. I still think he's very productive. I still do think he is. However, when you talk about up the middle, Marcus Semien, one of the best defensive second basemen, if not the best defensive second baseman last season, and he has been recently. We know he's a Gold Glover, but we also have a Marcus Semien who was identified as the team captain in that Texas clubhouse. Now, I think it's more of just a salary dump about their payroll. Does it make us question maybe why would they trade the captain so much? They're their captain when they are looking to compete? Maybe. But I understand the downside of 30 probably is a factor here with them trading away Marcus Semien. He's obviously declined over these last 2 seasons as well. Same thing goes for Brandon Nimmo. But if you were to talk about, let's say, what Brandon Nimmo's given you over the last 2 seasons compared to what Marcus Semien has given you over the last 2 seasons, do you guys believe that Marcus Semien could give you this from the second base position, along with the Gold Glove defense that Brandon Nimmo doesn't have? Could he slash 244, 326, 418, 111 weighted runs created plus? I think that's pretty plausible, especially when you're talking about a Marcus Semien who was an 89 weighted runs created plus. He was 101 the year before. Just a little bit better, can go a long way from the bottom part of the lineup. And I know that everyone wants to talk about the young guys because you add in another infielder to already a crowded infield. You probably have like 9 plausible infielders as of right now, projected going into opening day as of right now, if all of these guys stay on the roster. I don't think they will. However, you have a very crowded infield. When you talk about all the options at second base, you need Francisco Lindor to have a good double play partner. It's very, very important because the Mets, since Francisco Lindor has been here, and I've been talking about this a lot on Twitter. If you follow me on Twitter, my handle is obviously right under my face right now if you're watching, at MW Karst. That means Mets Weekly, by the way, for those of you who want to know that certain mystery. If you didn't know, there you go. Either way, since Francisco Lindor became a Met, the Mets turning double plays, and obviously with Francisco Lindor taking up pretty much all of the innings, it more has to go with his double play partner. And if you go to overall run value, and this is tongue-in-cheek. Not tongue-in-cheek. This is not fully at face value here. But if you're talking about from a certain sample that has gone on for quite a while, this is now 5 seasons that Francisco Lindor has been a Met. If you talk about double play run value, the Mets have a negative 11 double play run value, with Lindor obviously playing a majority of those innings. Now, we all know what the majority combo is up the middle, and we're going to talk about that combo and some of the stuff off the field as to when that article dropped from Mike Puma. We're going to get into it. But the Mets have been awful at turning double plays. This has been a problem for quite some time. And it's something that I think goes very unnoticed. And I don't think a lot of people talk about it. But the Mets are one of the worst teams at turning double plays. And a lot of that, even though there's, third baseman workload as well in there, double play run value through Fangraphs. If you're not if you don't like these certain stats, I'm sorry. But double play run value per Fangraphs is run value distributed between a shortstop and a second baseman. It's just that. There's a little bit more arm factor for a third baseman. But when you talk about, let's say, a double play run value, negative 11, like I said, for the Mets since Francisco Lindor, one of the best defensive players of this generation, since Francisco Lindor became a Met. And when you talk about, let's say, the double play combo there, the certain double play combo that has been a majority, tallying it up over these last 5 years, has been Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor. So basically, David Stearns just told you straight up, obviously, in his closing press conference to end the year, talking about run prevention. And one of the biggest factors, because to be honest, because the defensive metrics are actually not awful for this team, they're just very spotty of who's the good defender and who's not, and who's the liability and who's not, because we've had a decent amount of sample. But when it comes to turning double plays, that is one of the areas that this team really, really struggles in. So they had to get a sure-handed piece up the middle. They had to give Francisco Lindor a double play partner. And I'm not saying that Francisco Lindor is completely off the hook here, because to be honest, in 2025, Lindor's defense had a little bit of a lackadaisical feel to it. It wasn't sharp completely. But when you're talking about Francisco Lindor as an overall defender, you want to complement him with a second baseman that he doesn't clash with. And we'll get into, obviously, that. Like I said, I keep hinting at it. I'm sorry that I keep teasing it in and out, but I just want to keep this strictly to Semien. I like what they did here long-term for the team. I know right now it doesn't look fantastic, because right now you have no left fielder. You don't know what's going to go on at first base, even though I think we all kind of know what the deal is. And then you have a bunch of infielders: Beatty, Vientos, Mauricio, Acuna. And then you have McNeil, Lindor. So that's 6 right there. Then you have Jet Williams possibly on the way, who might make his major league debut this year. So that's 7 right there. Not even adding in a first baseman, even though the corners are not really the biggest factor here. But when you look at Beatty, look at McNeil, you look at Acuna, in overall experience, it really does mesh well with a problem they had in 2025 and even before. But in 2025, extending the inning, the run prevention, the defense was really bad for this team. And David Stearns made it very, very public. So again, I am very, very interested to see what they do with this Nimmo money kind of coming off the books, because like I said already in the stream that we did when it happened, they basically moved increments of money without giving up no prospects, and they basically just replaced their left fielder with a new second baseman. So now you have a lot of flexibility to move the position player group even more beyond Semien because of that. And I'm not going to say that Semien is a slam dunk move. He may suck offensively. He may. It could happen. But I do think that there is the right tools that can be placed in the right way. And especially when we're talking about a lot of these factors regarding Marcus Semien. The Mets did not have that many right-handed hitters in that lineup. They have Pete and Alvarez, right? Maybe Lindor from the right side as a switch hitter. Pete and Alvarez, Acuna, we don't really count that much as a bat. Maybe Marte. Marte could be gone. They didn't have that many right-handed bats. Check that off the list. They were one of the worst teams in turning double plays. Marcus Semien, Gold Glove second baseman, one of the best defensive second basemen in all of baseball, paired up with Francisco Lindor, one of the best defenders of this generation. Check that off. Purpose of the concept of swinging late. I mean, we talked about this all, obviously, with the whole Eric Chavez stuff. That's now in the past. Mets didn't pull that many fly balls. They, in some cases, we thought that they were swinging late as to why they were late on so many fastballs. Marcus Semien pulls fly balls. There's plenty of factors here. Mets struggled against left-handed pitching. Marcus Semien can hit left-handed pitching. Yes, I know he didn't hit it well in 2025, but throughout his career, he's done well. And then you talk about leadership. He was seen as the captain in that clubhouse. And when we get into this story that we saw from Mike Puma, whether you believe it or not, there definitely was a lack of leadership in that clubhouse. There definitely was a lack of guys either holding each other accountable or guys just not meshing well compared to the oh my God Mets, the JD Martinez Mets, Jesse Winker Mets, whatever you want to call it, the great clubhouse guys. So maybe that does settle that off a little bit. Because obviously there may be more of a older generation that looks at this and is like, well, these guys don't have to like each other. They're employees. It's more of the fact of, well, these guys are together for more than 162 plus days in a year. They're 8 months together. They're together for a while. You would want at least a better flowing environment compared to, well, these guys just don't like each other. And when the mental game continues to be more of an issue with more eyes on you as this game has evolved, it takes a toll on these guys. It does. And obviously we like to see them as, well, you are what their stats are, or we know what these guys are. But there's other aspects that are important to the clubhouse. We know how important that type of veteran presence was in 2024. And we will get into the whole concept with Lindor and McNeil. First, I want to go obviously into the comments section, see what you guys are saying about the Semien deal. Let's see. There's some stuff about this whole entire situation. There's some stuff in this chat. Let's see. Kenthal saying, little left in the bat, 95 RBIs, 25 home runs. You're fucking ignorant. Yes, listen, I do think that there's a little bit left in the bat. And this is underlying numbers that I'm talking about. The underlying numbers that I'm talking about. Ken, I'm pretty sure I just let your comments allow. I think I just unbanned you in the chat. Don't make me regret that. That'd be nice. Let's see. Lindor is one of the best defensemen of this generation. Maybe he, when he was with Cleveland, all I can say is errors and balls in the dirt at Alonso, who saved his ass. I mean, listen, I already said that Lindor did not have a great defensive season. I think it's all really established as to why a lot of the leadership and a lot of the message that was being sent was not fantastic. And I'm going to get on Lindor as to why. But Lindor, range-wise, his overall athletic ability up the middle, yes, he is one of the best defensive players of this generation. Whether you want to look at defensive metrics or you want to look at, his pedigree or not, yes, he is one of the best defensive shortstops. By far. By far. Either way. And listen, the veteran leadership, Melaza saying it was a big mistake letting Iglesias go. There's only so many, and this is going to be another topic that I'm going to get into in a second. There's only so many bench spots that you can have. You can only have 4 bench spots. So they're going to have to make some cut possibly. I would have been okay with them bringing Iglesias back, but I also was okay with them putting a lid on the 2024 Mets and moving on. However, there were other parts of this roster that were not filled in correctly. And, I've talked about it many times already. But when it comes to, this fact, and I think Evan actually said it in the chat, if a Latin pop star was the only reason the clubhouse was together, you got bigger problems. And listen, the Mets underperformed. Mets underperformed in 2025. And there is going to be heat in that clubhouse no matter what. If you're losing, there is going to be heat at a typical hour. But the thing is that you can't continue to enable the best friend mentality or this full-on mentality of these guys in the clubhouse staying there, taking up a roster spot when it limits the team. Because as much as I love Jesse Winker, I love his energy. I love that guy. I like JD Martinez. As much as I like Jose Iglesias, what do they provide? Starling Marte is another one. Like, what do they give you that makes this roster more flexible and has more dimensions to it? Marte can maybe, contact hit. He can't play defense anymore. His lower half is compromised. Jose Iglesias, as much as he really would help this team, again, he's 37 years old. He's not young. And you got plenty of young infielders on this team that if they're going to keep them, they got to play them. Jesse Winker, play a little bit of outfield, but he's been banged up recently. He's a hitter. You need versatile guys off the bench. You do. You really do. Because that's what a bench is for. It's for more dimensions to the team, And I think, again, when it comes to this clubhouse, we're going to get into it right now. I am not going to sit here and point fingers because that's basically the full-on mentality that continues to be the reason as to why we don't get any consistency or any sustainability. There's always some kind of scapegoat that we got to continue to point the finger at. However, I am going to try and hold guys accountable as much as I can. I will talk about this. But I don't know if there's going to be that much that a lot of people are going to like what I have to say. Has that stopped me before? No. But I'm just saying, these types of stories, they do exactly what Mike Puma looked to do. They bring in a lot of drama. They get guys red hot. They pit guys on the team against each other, which is what you're trying to avoid. And to be honest, when this came out, we all knew, every Mets fan knew, that this article would not come out if the Mets made the postseason. But they didn't. To many faults of their own. Many faults of their own. But there's some parts of this article that were so insane and so much of a reach that it really didn't take much to just say, oh, well, this starting pitching just stunk this year. That's why it sunk this team. That's why. And if you even look at the title of this article, it shows you exactly what the scapegoats are looked at. And listen, I understand putting out the faces of Lindor and Soto and things like that. But again, these last few words in this title saying it helped doom the Mets 2025 season when it had nothing to do, they didn't say a single thing with their pitching staff. That's a little peculiar to say, okay, well, I think we're reaching here. But there is a type of mentality or a type of message that was being sent that it definitely seemed very fizzy, very, very, very in and out in 2025. And a lot of that goes on the leaders of this team, or the supposed leaders on this team. Francisco Lindor, if you want to call him a leader, if you want to call Juan Soto the leader, We can even put Pete Alonso in there. But I know that, nobody wants to talk about that. As of right now, they just want to talk about throwing $800 million at him. But that's not going to happen. So again, I understand the frustration with this, but I do also think that there's a lot of fabrication to this article. And I will get into what I do believe and what I don't believe about this. But I'm going to just talk about what was said as the main headliners. Now, it obviously starts off with the Mets talking about a certain game on June 20th in Philadelphia, where apparently we had once again another disagreement, another conflict between Francisco Lindor and Jeff McNeil. This isn't new. We've seen it happen before. It happened in 2021. As the article reads, after a defensive lapse on June 20th in Philadelphia, an angry Lindor at some point began verbally attacking McNeil, according to a source, leading to what was described as a tense standoff between the two. The Mets lost their 7th straight that night, and an initial stretch of facility that indicated maybe something was amiss with a team that had surged to a season high 21 games over 500 just a week earlier. A play, and in quote from this source, they said that a play didn't get made and that pissed Lindor off, a source that was nearby the confrontation said. There is no indication this latest known incident between the two turned physical. That is unlike 2021, when an argument between the two sparked a defensive letdown, spilled over into the runway in between the dugouts and the clubhouse. The Post later reported that Lindor grabbed McNeil by the throat and pinned him against a wall. Listen, we're going to get into this Francisco Lindor, Jeff McNeil stuff. But first, let's get into what we saw about Lindor and Soto's relationship in their first year as teammates with the Mets. Another clubhouse source indicated that relations between Lindor and Juan Soto were chilly. Soto is a very businesslike, and this is in quotes, all business, no fluff, the source said. He wants to come to the yard and work his tail off and win games. He is not into fashion or any of the other stuff. Lindor is into that. It's just two different personalities. There are questions over who exactly was leading this team. Lindor, who has often been identified as the potential captain material, seemed to lost his grasp of the clubhouse. Soto hardly dispelled that later in the season, saying that Starling Marte was the team captain. And we've seen him say publicly that Starling Marte is a leader in that clubhouse, and he's advocated to bring back Starling Marte in 2026. Do I think that is going to happen? Probably not. But we will see what happens there. Either way, let's get into this Lindor and Soto stuff first, okay? This has to be the stupidest thing I've ever read in my life. What I saw was, well, Lindor and Soto are two different people. So there has to be a problem here. What? What did you just waste New York Post characters on, Mike Puma? Seriously? That's it. Lindor likes fashion, and Juan Soto does not. Awesome. That's so cool. They're two different people. Oh my goodness. Call the fucking police. Void his contract. Void both of their contracts because they're two different people. What? In what way? Does this obviously does this in any way get a headline? And we all know this is for clicks because, again, this was behind a paywall. This was behind a paywall. Soto gets the job done by being all business. Lindor also gets the job done and has had a fantastic career, a Hall of Fame pace career, by being into fashion. Wow. That is heartbreaking. He is into fashion. Meanwhile, nobody gave a shit when Yoenis Cespedes was into getting chased by wild boars. When that popped up, we're like, okay, proceed. Like, in what way? In what way does this deserve anything of a headline whatsoever? You have Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto, two superstars in this game. And this is all we come up with. There was no physical altercation. There was no disagreements at all, publicly. It was the fact that Juan Soto is all business, and he just wants to do his job. Compared to Francisco Lindor, who likes fashion and is a little bit more outgoing. Why the fuck does this matter? For what reason does this matter? And obviously, when you see Lindor and Soto together on a headline, that's obviously going to get more clicks than something with Lindor and McNeil. So why does this make sense? Why is this something that is said to be a problem? And I'll tell you why it's seen as it looks bad. And this is why it was put in by Puma to go into relation to Soto saying that Starling Marte is more of the captain of this team, of saying bringing guys together, being more vocal. And we obviously know that there's a little detail of, Juan Soto not really pausing for those pictures in the dugout, like these little details that we were all seeing. And of course, we know he hates being a New York Met, and he's miserable, and he hates being there, whatever. All those rumors that go hand in hand, whatever. But it was seen that Marte, in a lot of these clips, was, bringing Soto into this situation. So maybe he does feel a little bit more closer to Starling Marte. And Starling Marte obviously has a good history with Soto. I think that's just more a friendship with Soto for many years before he was even here. Doesn't everybody remember that home run derby in, 2021, 2022, where Marte was all over Soto? Couldn't stop talking to him, bringing him Gatorade. I mean, those guys are friends. Those guys are good friends. I believe that both of them played for Team Dominican Republic in the WBC in 2019? I don't know. 2017? 2017? Might be it. Either way, let's say that all of these devices being used, obviously, it seems like you're trying to pit Soto and Lindor against each other. But personally, I just think it's the fact that Soto is friends with Marte. But then it looks like there is a backhanded message that is being delivered, which sounds like a bunch of high school drama. People are saying that Lindor is the captain of this team. Soto saying, oh, well, I think that Starling Marte is the captain of this team. Maybe it's just because he's closer with him. I don't think that there was much to think about it. You also had a follow-up article come out from, I forget what. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. It was on Disha. I think Disha. She put out an article as well, talking about from Lindor's perspective, Disha Thosar, she put out a silver lining to Juan Soto find the chemistry with the team. It just looks like Disha Thosar, if I said that correctly. Francisco Lindor gave a lot more of a respect, working relationship type of rundown of his relationship with Soto. And we also saw some of the other young guys talk about their relationship with Soto as well. And it didn't seem like there was anything. Lindor literally just said about how he keeps to himself. And I don't think that there's anything wrong for that. Saying that he's away from the world. Lindor said of Soto's personality earlier this month, which I think was about in August maybe, saying it's him, his family, his little group, and then that's it. And then he comes in and out. He shares moments with us, but he has said it multiple times. I'm quiet. I just want to come in, win, do my thing. That's who he is. Just in and out, in and out, in and out, and that's perfectly fine. But he doesn't like fashion. All right, man. That sucks. Oh, well. And not once in this article, like I said, they said, well, this led to the demise of this team. How about that awful starting rotation performance for months? I think that led to the team being bad. How about the awful defense all year? I think that led to the team being bad. Winning would heal all. We know that winning in a clubhouse, there's a lot more of a better feel in that clubhouse compared to if they start losing. I'll give you another example. In 2022, when this team made the playoffs, won 101 games, there was definitely some unity on that team. A lot of unity in that team. It was a tight-knit group. There was a lot of great clubhouse guys. Eduardo Escobar, Mark Canha, Starling Marte, all brought in on that Black Friday, right? And it seemed like all that was put together. All that was great and all. In 2023, they brought back the exact same team. The exact same team was brought back. Minus some additions in the pitching staff, obviously. But that same position player group, a lot of those guys came back the next year. And then it was completely different. We got reports about this guy's a diva, this is this, and this is that. Tommy Pham, let's not forget him saying that. All that stuff about this team. So when the team's losing, tempers are going to flare. And there's obviously other issues here. And the main thing that I think that gets pointed out here is, once again, Francisco Lindor and Jeff McNeil. Let me take a big sip of water before I get into this. Like I said, the confrontations that the two of them have had, pushing them aside for now, to me, it's all about what the production looks like on the field. And like I said already, the Mets are not a good team at turning double plays. I already said that the combo of Lindor and McNeil on double play chances, a -7 double play run value for the last 5 seasons. One of the worst double play combos in the game. Obviously a bigger sample. But you also can look at Lindor with Luis Guillorme, if you want to talk about that. +3. Jose Iglesias, neutral, +1, actually, I think, on Lindor's end. Combining all of those guys together. And again, that's not the end-all be-all stat. But when you're talking about 5 years already, you can say that everything has evened out to a sustainable outlook. Because these guys have spent, what? A big chunk of those 5 years up the middle together. They're not good together. They aren't. They're a terrible combo. Even if you want to talk about it individually. Francisco Lindor, a great defensive shortstop. One of the best in the game. Like I said, one of the best of this generation. Some of the best range, which is one of the main tools of a shortstop. Jeff McNeil, a plus defender at second base. That's his best position that he plays. Has it deteriorated a few over these last few years? Sure. But these guys together? Nightmare. A nightmare. On and off the field. Especially when you have ground ball pitchers like Peterson, Holmes, little bit of Manaea. Doesn't this run prevention discussion kind of go into up the middle, defense up the middle? And I know that Mark Vientos is not a great defensive third baseman. The Mets have gone in and out of third base. But again, like I said, those double play metrics that I just pointed out, those are amongst the shortstop and the second baseman. One of the main reasons as to why Semien was brought in. Another one. Now, Francisco Lindor. There has to be a little bit of accountability here because of the result that we got on the field. He was looked at as a leader, and I do find it spotty. I find it spotty with the top players at all on this team, considering how much this team has failed. Somebody mentioned in the chat, Philip said it, saying that you want to be the Dodgers, don't be afraid to let your players go. They do it all the time. Mets fans are stuck in this loser mindset that this core has ever won. They haven't. And it's more of the message that is being sent by the leaders. And to be honest, no message at all, or a mixed message that's being sent by the leaders. We already talked about the coaching staff. We talked about, Carlos Mendoza having a really rough year. But also, when you think about it, the most of this success has come from veteran presence in that dugout. And they have to find a good median for it, of guys who can be everyday players and also those good veterans. Something that Marte is not. Something that Iglesias should not be. Something that Winker should not be. Like, all of those guys are not everyday players. That's why Marcus Semien was brought in. Another reason as to why. Plenty of reasons as to why that fits. And yes, I know the hitting stats aren't great, and everyone's going to jump down my throat as to why. I still think that there's things that are salvageable there, but there's a strong chance that that doesn't work. Either way, Jeff McNeil, we have run our course. It is enough. I'm more frustrated in the fact that the Mets have allowed this to go on as long as it has. And I'm not going to point the finger at Jeff. Jeff's the big problem. Jeff's an issue. Jeff's the only issue. We all know my history with Jeff McNeil. Jeff McNeil and I are reluctant acquaintances throughout the baseball season. He doesn't even know who I am, but I'm just saying. Jeff McNeil, I have controversial opinions about him. We all know this. I've said it for years. But the fact that this front office, this management has allowed this to go on for as long as it has, it shows you how much this team has lacked detail, has lacked doing the right things the correct way. And when it comes to Jeff McNeil, when you have an opening in left field, I don't want to see him starting in left field because you couldn't find a good value return for Jeff McNeil. I want them to trade him. I need them to move on. This has gone on long enough. If you need to move Nimmo, you need to move McNeil too. And even if that includes Pete Alonso, I've said I'm open to that too, but I know that everyone's going to say that I just want Pete Alonso gone now that I say that. No, I don't. What I'm saying is you got to make changes. And Jeff McNeil, it's run its course. Once again, he had another procedure. This is probably like his third offseason procedure. He's been banged up to start. He was banged up to start the season as well. Could it be the possibility as to why he was playing center field was because of the relationship with Lindor? I don't know. We even saw former Mets manager Buck Showalter say on Foul Territory that it was good between Lindor and McNeil. To me, it's all about how these guys work together. Because I could sit here and say, well, I'm not a big fan of Jeff McNeil. Just let him go already. I could say that because I do want them to move on from him. However, it's all about how these guys work together. Like, I'm done beyond the childish shit of the he said, she said. These guys don't like each other. These that don't. It's an issue. We know it's an issue. It's continued to be an issue. And I'm upset that they have allowed it to go on for so long. Not because of, I don't like Jeff McNeil. I want Jeff McNeil gone. It's the fact that these two together, like I just said, are terrible together. The shortstop and the second baseman are supposed to be, nearly attached at the hip. There needs to be fluency there. Defense up the middle is more important than anybody. Anything defensively. The catcher, very important defensively. The second baseman and shortstop, very important defensively. Center field, very important defensively. And you can't have them continuing to clash. Because I'm not going to sit here and point fingers, say, well, Lindor's the problem. McNeil's the problem. Because does that solve anything? No, it doesn't. It does not at all. Because it seems like we're ignoring the fact continuously that these two do not work well together. They don't. And the fact that winning cures everything. As Darren Rivero says, I'm saying, in that clubhouse, when you're winning, that's how it feels. But when you're talking about inconsistent leadership, when you're talking about year in and year out of them being inconsistent, this is one of the reasons as to why. There's been things about Francisco Lindor that I have not liked. I think that there's been plenty of instances where he wasn't setting a good example as a leader. And I think that it's another reason as to why we didn't have to have this conversation of David Wright getting his number retired and him passing the reins on to Lindor. First of all, it should have been, his day. It was about David Wright. But also the fact of that, you don't need to staple things together and try to force things together like the Mets have tried to staple and force things together for so long. These two, Lindor and McNeil, don't work well together. If they worked well together and the numbers showed it and there was no problems on the field, I don't care. I don't care what's going on. But the fact that these two are so bad up the middle together, not separately, not saying, well, defensive metrics for Jeff McNeil, defensive metrics for Francisco Lindor, because they're both plus. The two of them working together is a problem, especially when you have guys in this rotation who are ground ball pitchers, ground ball relievers. I wonder why Tyler Rogers didn't work out. All that stuff in the clubhouse is great when you're winning. But when you're losing, there's things that need to be pointed out as to where there has to be seriousness. And I do have a certain fear that the Mets are going to try and be bringing in a lot of these veterans that have no spot on the team just to keep these guys happy. And I'm tired of it. I like the environment that they have... Listen, the environment that Steve Cohen has created compared to the Wilpons, where, players have said publicly that they were seen as commodities compared to actual players and actual humans. I like the environment here, but there has to be a boundary that is set. When you look at from Lindor to Soto to Nimmo to, guys like for what they did with Scherzer, they did for Justin Verlander, like all of these big signings that they made, all these accommodations that they made, the accommodations that they made for even Edwin Diaz when he got injured, the accommodations that they made with Kodai Senga. Like, listen, that's how you build that's how you build a great culture within the clubhouse and within the organization, but you have to cut it out somewhere. You can't just be looking at this team that continues to underperform and be like, yeah, well, let's just give them whatever they want. You have to have a cutoff there. And I'm not saying no food or water for guys in the clubhouse, okay? Let's relax. What I'm saying is the Mets underachieved in 2025. That doesn't mean, oh, well, bring back Marte because he's friends with Soto. Bring back this guy. Bring back that guy. You lost with a near $400 million payroll. You need to make changes. It's that simple. It is that simple. And when it comes to Jeff McNeil, with them pretty much trading for his replacement, I don't want to see the thought of, well, Jeff McNeil will just play left field. Because you can't preach run prevention immediately after the team fails in a press conference. And I'm talking about David Stearns here. You can't preach run prevention and say, well, McNeil is older than Nimmo, just as banged up, not that good of a defensive left fielder range-wise compared to Nimmo, even though they're kind of on the same platform, doesn't have a strong arm. We'll just put him out there. We'll just put him out there in left field. Put him out there until Benj is ready. Hope is not a strategy here. It's just not. There is no way you can say, well, McNeil doesn't get along with Lindor, so we can just put him in left field because he's a utility guy. Just because he can play those positions does not mean he should be. Again, there's so much that goes into a team being successful that they have to cut out the issues. I'm not saying that Jeff McNeil is an issue, even though I don't like his attitude, even though I'm not a fan of how stubborn he is with his approach. I'm not a fan of the limitations that you get from a guy in a 6'3" frame at second base. Because that is a factor with second basemen. There's a reason why they're so short, because they're compact and they can, move the ball quicker. That is a factor. There's a main reason as to why the second baseman is one of the shortest guys on the field. And I'm not saying that's the reason as to why he needs to go, but I'm just saying limitations are a thing with Jeff McNeil. And as he continues to get older, is he going to be moving that taller frame better? No. Absolutely not. And then we all know the bat in 2025 was not fantastic. He had some really good moments, some really good stretches. I thought he was better than I thought he was going to be. I thought he was much better. I gave him his props, but it's time to go. You can't just simply put, oh, well, good year, keep this guy no matter what. Well, what did they do with that good year? Why are you providing so many resources, so much money for this team to underachieve with the same group every single year? You got to make changes. And Nimmo is not the only one. And we'll see what those changes are. We know that there's talk about Kodai Senga. We know that there's talk about Jeff McNeil, but I don't want to see them balk at it because, oh, well, friendship. I don't care about your friendship. You are losers. All you have done is lose. This team hasn't won a World Series in what now? Almost 40 years. It's going to be 40 years in 2026. Correct? I think I did that math correctly. 40 years. Changes have got to be made. They have to. Obviously, again, there's plenty of, this buddy-buddy mentality in that dugout, which I think everybody would find more charming or more of a soothing thing if the team was winning. But again, when the team doesn't win, when the team isn't successful, why are you keeping everyone comfortable, everyone friends, everything that they want? And there's going to be another piece of concern that I'm going to bring up in reports that I'm going to dupe out later on in one of the next segments here. But I am tired of seeing for 5 years now these players get everything they want, everything that they ask for, and not reciprocate the success. And I understand the image of the franchise needs to be better compared to what it was with the Wilpons. But there, again, has to be a boundary. You can't bring back Starling Marte because he's friends with someone. I'm not saying that Starling Marte is the reason why this team lost. But I'm saying pieces have to be dissected from this team. The mentality's got to be different. It can't just be, don't trade my best friends. Because no one is going to take a team like that seriously. No one. Absolutely not. It's all about putting the best team out there. And I think that there's better options than Starling Marte. And you can tell me, listen, I agree. I agree that he has an influence on this team. And I agree that he is a great guy. I love Marte. But there has to be a boundary here. Because in reality, let's talk about this for a second. When you're getting to, the end of February, you come into spring training and you look at this Mets bench, right? You obviously have four bench spots because of the DH now. You get a backup catcher in Luis Torrens. You're going to have Tyrone Taylor probably as the fourth outfielder. You're going to need one of these guys, Acuna, Mauricio, or Vientos, on your bench as well as a backup infielder, because all of them are out of minor league options. So that leaves one spot left. And that one spot, if you give that to Starling Marte, what is Starling Marte providing for you? A contact hitter? That's about it. Again, this is not the Starling Marte of the prime, you know? He's a good hitter, runner, steal. No, he's not. Not anymore. He isn't. He was, and I loved the prime of his career. I'm not saying 6'3" is short. No, I said 6'3" is tall for a second baseman. Marte, not as good as a base runner anymore. He's not as good of a defender anymore. He's a terrible defender now. Doesn't steal bases because the lower half, like, he's not that player anymore. And it limits the team. It does. It limits the roster. You don't want Marte as a player. But the thing is that Marte wants to be a player in 2026. Maybe he has 1 or 2 more years left in him. But the Mets can't really afford with that. Again, what have they won with that certain formula? Nothing. You know what I mean? It's the fact of you have to draw the line between having such a amazing clubhouse and friendships all around to putting out a winning team. If guys don't get along and something is working, like when people are mentioning it on the chat, the 86 Mets team, a lot of those guys hated each other. Some of them to this day don't have relationships with each other because they can't stand each other. But it worked. They won. They were winners. The math was the math. The numbers were the numbers. That team was dominant. But when you're looking at a team that's underachieving, and then also Jeff McNeil and Lindor, who basically don't like each other. They obviously don't. I'm sure they have a mutual respect for each other, obviously. But the way that it was covered up, enough with the bullshit. Doesn't everybody remember in 2021? Oh, well, it was a rat and a raccoon. Awesome, man. And everyone was like, haha, we love this team because that team was in winning position. That team was in first place at that point. But then, at the end of the season, or afterwards, I don't know if that came out right after the season. They said, oh, well, there was a physical confrontation with these guys. Well, then everybody's like, oh, this is an issue because they're not winning. Winning heals all, like we have said already, if it's working. But it's not working. Lindor and McNeil up the middle is a disaster. Statistically and off the field. And Lindor's contract is not going to get moved. So what does that leave? The guy with one more year on his contract. And that's Jeff McNeil. And I'm not saying that Jeff McNeil is the problem. Jeff McNeil is cancerous to this clubhouse. I don't like his attitude at all. I think he's a baby. I think that he's very soft. And I think that when he constantly beats himself up, it doesn't help him whatsoever. So, again, They have to move on. It is time to move on. No more Jeff McNeil is the utility guy. Jeff McNeil's the Swiss Army knife. No. No more. No more of this. Stop trying to force Jeff McNeil down our throats. Enough. No more. This has gone on long enough. Move on. Clear it out. And make actual upgrades. Everyone wants to talk about, well, we want them to sign guys. Get talent on this roster. How do we do that? Clear out the declining assets. Clear out the sunk assets. That's how you do it. Because you can only have 26 guys on the roster. You can only have 40 guys on your 40-man roster. That's why it's called a 40-man roster. I know. I'm a smart guy like that. I know. And yes, for those of you asking, I'm talking about them as a double play duo. And again, I'm not saying that the double play duo is the biggest deal whatsoever if both of those guys perform offensively. But what I'm saying is, we saw what sunk this team. Yes, the pitching staff was bad. Yes, it was. But also the defense was horrendous. Horrendous. But these two, Lindor and McNeil, I think it's very easy to prove. And like I already said, statistically, this team together, this duo together, are terrible. They don't work well together. The two of them. I even posted a compilation of these guys, and I have plenty of clips left. That's the thing. I had a 4-minute compilation of Lindor and McNeil not being able to turn double plays, but I had more. I had even more. I had like 35 clips more that I didn't even put in that video. That's how crazy it is. That's how awful those two are together. And it's not just them failing to turn double plays. It's somebody not covering second base. There's been plenty of dropped throws from the other, bad throws from the other, drop throws from the other. I mean, there's so many different combinations of these guys not working well up the middle. It's time to move on. You can't sell me on Jeff McNeil as the starting left fielder on opening day. You can't. And you can't sell me as Jeff McNeil as one of the bench spots for this team. $15 million for this guy, over $15 million for this guy to be a bench piece. I just don't know how many times we have to just roll with the bullets because of Billy Epler's incompetence. I'm getting tired of it. I'm getting really, really tired of it. Bring us guys who can give us the value that they are paid for. Cut the dead weight. Do it. Please. That's all I ask. Chemistry up the middle. It's important. And the main reason as to why I'm upset about it and why it pisses me off is because it's gone on for 5 years now. 5 years. And the way that they covered it up for so long, just for it to come right back. Jeff McNeil's getting a car because he won a batting title. This is a new thing for, this is a new thing for them in the dugout. Oh, well, it's a rat or a raccoon. I don't care about this crap anymore. I don't. 5 years under Cohen already. 5 years. They have one overachieving season, 4 underachieving seasons. I'm done with it. I am done with the crap. I am done with all the jokes, all the gimmicks. Enough. Great. You're all friends. I am so happy. Couldn't care less. If you're all such great friends, wouldn't you work a lot better together? Wouldn't you be able to win? They don't. I'm sick of it. I'm done. I'm just done. Bring up some of you guys in the chat, Game for War, saying, what will McNeil and Senga get us? There was a report about McNeil and Senga. I'll get into that. But we'll see what they do. I think assessing the trade market only makes sense, especially in the position that they're in, the glut of infielders. And to be honest, when you look at this depth chart of starters, they got to move someone in that rotation. They have to move someone, especially if you want to give leeway to these young guys pitching. In my opinion, Lindor took a dip, missing plays because of Beatty's growing pains. It was frustrated to see Lindor be frustrated. I mean, listen, we all know I'm not the biggest Beatty fan, but I do think that there is some notion of the shortstop and the third baseman. I think that there is a relationship to that can only go so far. Obviously, it's more of the third baseman to his right, the third baseman to his left, and the shortstop to his right. It's all really about the arm strength of the shortstop in that certain position. And we all know that Lindor has basically an average arm. So I feel like that was pretty much set up either way. Like, it was just set up to be like that. But yeah, listen, I don't think that they're fluid at all defensively on this team. I just don't. I just don't think that they work well together. And even if that with Semien, or if you want to put Beatty in that conversation, because he was a plus defender at third base in 2025. If you want to put him in that conversation, again, that's another reason why Semien is here. Because Semien is a plus defender at second base. But guess who you want to add to first base? Who does everybody want to bring back? That guy's not good defensively. He isn't. Before you tell me he's a good scooper, he's a liability at first base. Everywhere else. You can't tell me that's a stretch. You can't. Because we've seen him airmail throws constantly. Plenty of examples there. And especially, like we said, with these guys being here for so long, we know what they're capable of. We know what they're not capable of. And it all has to be addressed. And that doesn't mean me saying that I don't want Pete Alonso back, because I know everybody will jump down my throat when I say that. What I'm saying is you have to weigh out what's going to help, what won't. Just like I said with Semien, there's things about his bat that maybe it has declined. But also Pete Alonso, we know that in reality, long term, he's going to have to DH eventually. I'm not just going to talk about everything that's great about a player. I will also talk about what they struggle with. That's always how my analysis is. That has nothing to do with hard feelings towards anyone. I think Beatty is okay, but if I could upgrade the team by including him in a deal, I would. I would too, but there's plenty of people that, will see a flash of a third baseman and say that's my third baseman because they're missing David Wright. We did it with Vientos last year. We're doing it with Beatty. I'm sure we'll do it with Mauricio if he ends up breaking out at third base. You just never know. Somebody talked about Eugenio Suarez as a third base possibility. I saw somebody say it in the chat. We'll see. Again, that's another right-handed bat, so that could even out the lineup well. That would be nice because they do have a lot of lefties in this lineup that are considered the everyday players, even with Brandon Nimmo gone. So we'll see what they do to construct that because there's plenty of moves that have to be made. The same thing goes for this next guy that we're going to talk about, and that's obviously the latest signing that the Mets made, their second big major move so far of this offseason, that being Devin Williams. Like I said, it's a wait and see what they do in the outfield. Trading for Nimmo and Semien, we'll see what that trade looks like after they finish off the job. Same thing goes for Devin Williams, obviously, with the big guy Edwin Diaz still on the market right now. And we will see how they, are willing to shell out on that market. We'll get into that in a second. However, okay, I just saw a trade that went through. It looks like Johan Oviedo is going to the Boston Red Sox for a outfield prospect going back to Pittsburgh. So we'll see what's there. So nothing really that significant. It's a five player trade. So I guess I'll get an update on that somehow. But it seems like a lot more of a minor league deal. Oviedo is the only major league guy going either or with Boston or Pittsburgh. So anyways, let's get into Devin Williams. Now, we went live for Devin Williams when that signing happened. We talked about, obviously, the Edwin Diaz situation. But I do want to get into Devin Williams because I feel like there is a little bit of blood boiling here with this situation of, him not having that great of a year last year, the Mets bullpen having some uncertainty. There's obviously that heat of Yankee fans that, want to talk about us stealing their players. I don't really give a shit about that. I've never really been that big of a trash talker. I'm more of someone who likes to worry about their own team, which would be my preferred mentality. That's just me. Either way, let's get into Devin Williams. We all know what he is famous for. We all know his specialties. We'll get into all of it. Let's break this down. Enter the airbender, as we say here on this graphic, as the Mets agree to a 3-year, $51 million contract with $15 million of it deferred. And we also got that information from Mike Mayer today that it's going to be $1.5 million from 2036 to 2045, something like that. In that type of realm. So the cap hit is going to be $14.75 million for the luxury tax hit. And when it comes to Devin Williams, we know that the patented changeup, the airbender, as they like to call it, is quite a thing of beauty. It has horizontal break out the wazoo, more horizontal break than possibly any changeup compared to the league average, especially from a right-hander. Obviously, in the mid-80s, he throws it 52% of the time. He's a two-pitch guy. He has a four-seam along with it. In the mid-90s, 16 inches of induced vertical break, but he also has a decent amount of horizontal break, similar to Edwin Diaz, because he does throw from a low 21-degree arm angle, similar to Edwin Diaz. Along with it, 7.5 feet extension, 99th percentile. So he does get a lot of perceived velocity, especially against right-handed hitters. Now, a lot of the underlying numbers look pretty good. Didn't really give up a lot of hard contact. Plenty of swing and miss, as both of his pitches in his changeup and his four-seam were about 38% whiff rate. Plenty of chases, especially with that high-class changeup that he has. Induced ground balls fairly well. Like I said, against his changeup, great. There was very decent quality of contact. There wasn't very good quality of contact against his changeup or his four-seam fastball. The underlying numbers looked really good. One of the things that really popped out to me was the fact of course, him stranding runners was a very, very big problem last year and was basically what sunk him as much as it did in the Bronx. And especially with the underlying numbers, he stranded 55.2% of base runners from the stretch, which was the lowest among any reliever in all of baseball. And what makes it very, very interesting, again, like we said, a fielding independent pitching of 2.68, you can look at that and say, oh, well, there was some luck involved. Plenty of BABIP luck. Plenty of guys that he wasn't able to strand from the stretch. But then you kind of look at the entire look of it and split numbers for him. In 2025, you had, in 2025, with men in scoring position and with men on base, if you look at the splits of him pitching there, opponents still, the opponent's OPS with men in scoring position was still below the 600 OPS range. And then if you look at his FIP, or his fielding independent pitching with men in scoring position, 2.93. So I don't know what was going on there, but we saw plenty of meltdowns. However, when he's limiting hard contact, when he's limiting the home run ball, and I think at a career rate, there's definitely some things to work out here. Obviously. But when you're talking about him as the eighth inning guy, adding Edwin Diaz into this conversation, that's when we all feel better. I think we all can say that we feel better with Edwin Diaz as the ninth inning guy or in the eighth inning guy, if the matchups proceed. And Devin Williams should be poised to have a bounce-back year. We have all seen, with him as a setup guy behind Josh Hader, he has succeeded the most. So him as a closer is probably not the best look, and we'll see what happens with Edwin Diaz. But there was kind of a void to fill here, even if Edwin Diaz doesn't come back, of that secondary closer who has closing experience, who could probably take the ninth if either the closer isn't unavailable, even though with Edwin Diaz there's more availability with him because he always likes to pitch. But let's say you want Edwin Diaz to pitch in the eighth because the heart of the order is up, or you want him to pitch in the seventh in a tight game. You have that flexibility with what they thought they had with guys like Helsley, with guys like Gregory Soto, who had closing experience, but they didn't. When it comes to Devin Williams, there's a lot to like. There really is a lot to like. But I think that there's also this thought of him pitching in New York. There's been talks about, his attitude as well. There's some history there. He punched a wall in Milwaukee and he missed a majority of the season before coming back and getting manhandled by Pete Alonso in the wild card. So he's 31 years old. He is signed through age 33. And it keeps the Mets in contention to keep Edwin Diaz. $14 million is regularly a lot for a reliever, but they obviously put in a decent amount of deferrals, a cheap amount of deferrals to kind of even things out and leave the door open for Edwin Diaz to come back. And I think that there's a strong possibility that Edwin Diaz ends up coming back in a lot of those contexts, and we'll get into that in a second. But we'll see how this market pans out. We saw some reports today that either way, okay? We saw some reports today that there was a report from, I believe it was Rosenthal that put it out. It was on The Athletic, saying that Edwin Diaz, the best reliever on the market, who in addition to having the qualifying offer attached to him, is likely outside of the Dodgers' desired range. We talked about the Dodgers as the only team that could be interfered with the Mets retaining Edwin Diaz because of the qualifying offer attached to him. It's obviously a little bit different with him being a pitcher, but this is what we saw with Pete Alonso. And this is the reason why the qualifying offer has to go in the next CBA, but that's a different story because it slows down the market and it brings down the value of the market, and it also is just, bad press in that way that it does not allow players to get the worth that they are worth of, and it makes them need to bet on themselves again. Even though Pete didn't play that well in 2024, the point still stands. But again, with the Mets having the qualifying offer, the Dodgers seem to be the only team that would be like, fuck it, let's sign him. But if the Dodgers are out of that desired range, we saw some stuff about the Blue Jays, but they, we'll see what happens with that. They still have Jeff Hoffman there, even though it did not go well for them in that World Series. But there are plenty of closer needy teams. And we saw many of reports that Devin Williams had a big market, a huge market. He didn't have a qualifying offer attached to him. So again, he had a huge market. We heard that like half the league was in his market. Then you have Devin Williams come over here saying he's willing to be the setup guy. So maybe this is to sweeten the pot and say, hey, we got you a setup guy, Diaz. Maybe. We'll see. I'm confident that Diaz will end up coming back. More confident than Alonso. But I do see, with the limited market, within context, we also saw a report that the Mets aren't really, they're standing firm on not wanting to give him 5 years, which is completely fine, to be honest. Because who are they competing with right now? Like I said, the Dodgers are probably out on Diaz from that report that we got from The Athletic. And then it's kind of just casting a wide net of teams that need closers that are willing to, give up a draft pick, which is again, a 4th round pick. But again, it's a compensation pick. And then there's also some other, bonus money as well with the qualifying offer. So what does that leave his market as? Who are they competing with? They're not. It's the same thing with Pete Alonso last year. Pretty much. Pretty much the exact same thing. And again, we'll see what happens there. But I think that it is promising with Devin Williams that if he is in the 8th inning, we all feel a lot better. We all do. But I do think that he's very poised to make a bounce back, not just because of the underlying numbers, but also because of what he struggled with last year. There's also underlying numbers that look good. Like I just said, he was good statistically with runners on base, which he couldn't strand that many runners. So that's pretty crazy, isn't it? So it almost seems like this guy is poised to bounce back. And we've also seen him do well under David Stearns, too. David Stearns is very high on Devin Williams. He has a connection to him back in Milwaukee. And once David Stearns left, I think it was in like 2023 or whatever from Milwaukee, that's when he ended up being the closer, right? And he wasn't as effective as compared to in the 8th inning. So maybe furbishing this and putting it all together, him being in the 8th inning would be good. And I'm not going to completely give into being mad about Devin Williams having a rough year in New York when I know that the Mets are still leaving the door open for Edwin Diaz. Because I want Edwin Diaz to be back on this team. I do. Game for War saying, plus his Twitter trolling skills are on point. Yeah. Listen, I know it's Mets Yankees, and the Mets have taken a decent amount of Yankees players. I'm not getting into it because I just know how it ends on the Mets end. Because as soon as he messes up, the Twitter universe will light on fire. All this is great if he succeeds. Like we just said, like all of this is fine within the clubhouse if they're winning. So let's hope that he has a bounce back in him. He's going to have a target on his back, definitely. When you poke at Yankee fans, they don't forget. We even saw Sonny Gray, who got traded to the Boston Red Sox, even talk a little bit of shit about the Yankees. So either way, speaking of more reports going forward, let's get into the latest reports that we have been getting to kind of catch everybody up on the latest. There's plenty more too, in addition to this, but these are the more prominent rumor mill stuff from recent. Now, Will Salmon of The Athletic talked about Kodai Senga and his trade market, as we all know, has blossomed, and he definitely has a decent amount of teams that are interested in him. He said that Kodai Senga has told the Mets he'd prefer to stay rather than be traded, but that doesn't necessarily change his situation. Despite his stance, the Mets could still move him, but earlier this month, multiple teams have shown interest. Senga also holds a limited no-trade clause, allowing him to block deals to 10 teams. Andy Martino talked about Kyle Tucker basically saying that it doesn't really fit. I'm not going to get completely into that because, again, I just don't think the Mets are going to be attached to Kyle Tucker. I'm sorry if everybody wants him. I just don't think it's going to happen. Pete Alonso, Jeff Passan on ESPN said that Alonso's free agency is in its second month. He is waiting for a team to step to the forefront for him. The Red Sox could be the most serious non-Mets suitor for Alonso, and they're also interested in re-signing Alex Bregman. Jeff Passan talked about Jeff McNeil. Sorry. Jeff Passan talked about Jeff McNeil as well on ESPN.com, saying the acquisition of Semien took away McNeil's at-bats at second base, and he's not a great defensive outfielder, like I've already said, which for a team looking to shore up its fielding is suboptimal. This expectation then is that McNeil will be dealt, even if New York has to eat some of his $15.75 million deal. He also gave the Jeff McNeil trade an 80% chance of possibly happening, saying that the biggest fits as well for Jeff McNeil as trade destinations would be Pirates, Giants, and Royals. And then, of course, After Devin Williams signed, the Mets are still interested in re-signing Edwin Diaz. After agreeing to terms with Devin Williams, Williams is opening to pitching in a setup role, like I already said. The Mets are also seeking acquisitions in the rotation, first base, and left field, which we all know, considering you can look at this roster empty in left field, empty at first base, or, technically not empty because they have guys in the organization, but major league ready on a contending team does not have Mark Vientos at first base. So plenty of stuff to unpack here. I'm not going to get into all of it because, we have about 10 or 15 more minutes to play with here. But let's get into Kodai Senga here, okay? This is what I've been talking about of catering to the player's needs, okay? And I'm all good with treating your players well. That's fine. Again, if you treat your players well, other players are going to want to come over and play for the organization, but there has to be a boundary. We have given Kodai Senga pretty much everything he has wanted. We have given him a minor league assignment. We have given him extra days of rest. We have given him extra time to fix his mechanics. And like we have said on this show many times before, he has not reciprocated it. He has not reciprocated the production. And like I already said, it's the same situation. I don't care what Kodai Senga wants. I really don't. He doesn't want to get traded. Oh well. And I think that a message was sent from David Stearns, from this front office, saying that it doesn't matter who you are, you could get moved. And they said that exactly with Brandon Nimmo getting traded. Brandon Nimmo's been here way longer than Kodai Senga. Anyone is movable when a team does not succeed. And we have already talked about Kodai Senga. I just don't understand how there is... I don't know how there is a motivation in any way to keep up this mentality of changing the mentality with new leadership. Sending a message that a guy who has not pitched for a majority of the last 2 seasons has missed a lot of time. A lot. And needs all of these accommodations to succeed. If you're talking about 30 starts, he has made 23 starts in the last 2 years. 23 out of 60. He's just not dependable. He isn't. And to be honest, if we didn't have this injury concern, I'd be like, okay, well, he's a 3 in the rotation. He's getting paid like a 3. That's fine. But the fact that when he is healthy, we have to disrupt, the flow going of the rotation, the flow going of the bullpen when he can't go deep into games. It's just not worth it. It isn't. And we've already had this discussion about Kodai Senga. Kodai Senga's soft. He just is. Whether it is physically or mentally, he's soft. And it's not fair to him to say, oh, well, let's compare him to the other Japanese players, because they're all different players. They're all individuals in that way. But after seeing Yoshinobu Yamamoto, I'm not trying to make a complete comparison because, again, all of these guys are different. But when you're seeing Yoshinobu Yamamoto in Japan, they pitch once a week. Yoshinobu Yamamoto in the World Series, pitched game 1, 5, and 7. And he went deep into all of those games. That's an ace. That's a legitimate starting pitcher. Is Kodai Senga going to do that? And Andrew, my co-host, said this perfectly. Has he ever been comfortable? Like, these are the types of things that you can't do. You can't be sitting here with this nonsense. Because, again, who is going to take him on if this continues to get worse? It gets harder and harder over the next 2 seasons. And I think there's also like an additional 6th year or something if he doesn't get Tommy John. Like, we knew exactly what we were getting into. But, Epler signed him anyway. And he has been productive. I'm not going to say he's been bad, but I'm just saying, bringing in all of the factors. They have to move him. They have to. Because if you want to make additions to this rotation, someone is going to have to be the collateral damage. And I understand that, Stearns has a tendency to stash pitching guys, but who's going to go? If you're making additions to this rotation again, and not to mention all the question marks in it, which I'll get into in a second, but who's going to make the move? You have young guys. You have young guys in this rotation. You have young guys who are not even on the depth chart without them making any additions. Nolan McLean has a rotation spot going into opening day. I think we can all agree. Could it be David Peterson on the final year of his rookie deal? Probably about to make $9 million in ARB 3. Good luck moving Manaya's contract. Clay Holmes, I think that they like Clay Holmes and they're going to keep him another year. So you got to move someone. And the only guy that is obtainable, cost controllable is Senga, making starting pitcher 5 money. He comes with a lot of baggage that, again, you can't just wait around for because it's not worth it. It's not worth waiting around for. Because when they do wait around for it, what happens? What exactly happens? He came back in August in 2024, got injured again. Not reliable. Came back again, got blown up in the postseason. Came back from an injury again. And again, listen, Pete Alonso, awful throw. Awful throw to Senga, got him hurt. But if that is what got him hurt, like I said, soft. Not just physically, but mentally. He has said it so many times. I'm not there mentally. I'm not there. I need my mechanics perfectly. You can't do that in a 162 game season. I believe that Kodai Senga is a competitor. He wants to win. But is this going to get any better as he goes deeper into his 30s? No. It's not. You might as well just cut your losses now. And I don't want to see this team making more accommodations to a team that continues to underperform. You ask Senga, I don't want to get traded. I don't care. I don't care if you don't want to get traded. I don't want you getting hurt 3 times in 2 seasons. I guess we all can't have what we want. Carlos Ortiz saying, do you think they'll trade Manaea? I don't see it happening. I just don't. But I don't know. I think that's more of a question to ask. Maybe if he's doing well at the deadline and they're not in contention, maybe. Senga's unreliable at best. You can't depend on him. You can't. And if there was an injury history, like I said, if there was an injury history and injury concern going into his 30s, I'd be like, okay, keep him around. Don't sell low. Don't sell, don't do anything there. Keep him around. He's a fifth starter. When he's ready, he's ready. But he's not available. And when he is available, he needs all of these accommodations. Everyone completely preaches no bullshit with the team until there's time to get rid of the no bullshit. And like we said, even in addition to Senga, and I feel like we're looking at a rotation right now where every single one, everybody in this rotation, whether it's at their best or at their worst, it always comes up with the phrase, it always follows it up with the phrase, but here's the thing. You don't believe me? Nolan McLean was great. From the beginning he called up, you've got potential frontline starter. But here's the thing. He's only a rookie. There's adjustments that still need to be made. Maybe the league adjusts to him. Can he keep it up? We'll see. David Peterson has developed into a solid major league middle rotation guy. Knows how to induce ground balls, can give you some good volume. But here's the thing. Around August, September, he hits a wall, and he's never had 30 starts entirely in his career. Clay Holmes, solid veteran right-hander, can induce ground balls, had a really good year had a really solid year as the first year as a starter. But here's the thing. He struggles to get deep into games. That ground ball and lack of swing and miss could catch up to him. He walks a lot of guys. He has home run spurts. He also doesn't recover well from up downs either. One of the main reasons that's why he struggles in the middle innings. Sean Manaea. Great 2024. Good strikeout pitcher from the left side. Great swing and miss pitcher in general. But here's the thing. He is coming off of 2 injuries, an oblique strain that sidelined him for a majority of the season, and also loose bodies in his elbow, which it doesn't seem like he's getting a procedure on, that may or may not have affected his performance down the stretch of 2025. Question mark there. Kodai Senga. Frontline stuff, one of the most dangerous pitches when he is on the field. But here's the thing. He is barely on the field. A lot of accommodations need to be made. Do we understand why the Mets need to go in and trade for a starting pitcher? But like the 4 guys that I just named right there, there's even more. Some of them are injured. I could do a here's the thing for McNeil. McGill. I could do a here's the thing for Jonah Tong or Brandon Sproat or some of these other guys who have not even, dipped their toe in the water yet on a major league mound. There's too many question marks in this rotation. They need a legitimate frontline piece. And we will talk about those frontline pieces in next episode because there's been plenty of reports linking the Mets to those guys. And we don't have time for that today. It's a trickle-down effect, as Darren Rivera is saying. The six-man rotation to accommodate Senga probably is a trickle-down effect on the rest of the rotation. And the bullpen, too. The bullpen as well. I've talked about having a six-man rotation for Senga in accommodation. Even I was in that mentality of like, okay, we can get the best out of all of these guys. An extra day of rest, they can be more sharp. But obviously that didn't work out. So you got to pivot to something else. And the only way to do that is to remove Senga from the equation. Has nothing to do with his ability, like we have said already. As for some of the other stuff, Pete Alonso's market looks like it is kind of dried up as of right now. I mean, we've talked about it already. We hinted about it on the last stream that we actually did when Devin Williams signed. I mean, kind of what we expected here. I mean, it seems like it's Mets or Red Sox right now for him. It all continues to branch back to that 7-year, $158 million contract that he rejected. I mean, we just continue to say the same thing over and over again. But he listened to Scott Boras, and when you make a deal with the devil, sometimes you get burned. It happens. It just happens. And Pete, as great he has been for this team, the market looks at him as a hitting first baseman who's going into his 30s. And who knows how he's going to age. So they don't see it as a long-term commitment. And if he's looking for a long-term commitment, he had one to sign 2 years ago, and he rejected it. What can you do? I'm not going to get into the starting pitching stuff as much, but we are seeing some names being popped out that aren't Tyreek Skubal. We saw Joe Ryan's name come up. We'll see what happens there. Mitch Keller's name has come up. But again, if the Mets want to make these swaps, they have to move somebody in that rotation. And I think the most likely guys would be Kodai Senga or David Peterson. Those are the guys that I think are the most likely to get moved. And we'll see. Maybe it happens during the winter meetings. Who knows? Now, as for the winter meetings, I believe they are starting next week. So when the winter meetings do start, I just want to remind everyone, when signings do happen for the MLB, for the Mets, MLB signings for the Mets end up happening, we are going to go live for them. And we'll discuss them for about an hour with you guys, or 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to go live. I was thinking about doing it after every single day, like doing a podcast episode every single day, and we can talk about, all the reports that went out. That could possibly happen. I will have to check with my co-host, Andrew, to see how that works. But if not, we will be going live for each signing. We'll let you guys know when that ends up happening. But the winter meetings are from December 7th to the 10th. So they are in Orlando, Florida. So if anybody is in the Florida area, you can go over there. Pretty sure it's open to fans. I don't know. I don't know if I'm spreading misinformation there, but it usually is. So from December 7th to December 10th, we will be going live for any of that news that ends up happening. And we will talk to you guys. And listen, if there's like 5 signings that happen by the Mets, we're going to go live 5 times in a day. That's usually what happens. Now, for those of you who don't know what happens with the winter meetings, this is where all the GMs are there. There's a lot of free agents there. Agents are there. Scott Boras, obviously. Scott Boras, the most infamous one. And a lot of moves happen. And we have been seeing some expectation that a lot of the big pieces are going to be off the board by the time the winter meetings have concluded. But we'll see how all of those markets unfold. We'll see if Pete Alonso ends up signing. I think that Edwin Diaz is going to sign during the winter meetings. I do think Schwarber is going to sign. We'll see what happens there. I'm interested. I'm definitely interested to see if there's any trades that get made, or as many trades that do get made, because we do have a lot, and I mean a lot, that guys we haven't even mentioned on this show yet that could be on their way out. There's a lot of players. I am seeing an insane list. I think Jeff Passan put out an entire article of guys who could possibly get traded during the offseason. Carlos Ortiz saying, is Frank off the team? No. Frank is not off the team. I think, are you talking about Frank about sports? I don't know if that's who you're talking about, but no, he is not. He is still a part of Mets Weekly. I am just doing it solo today because we had some scheduling issues with my other two co-hosts, which is fine. It happens. So eventually, you guys will see. Again, we'll have plenty of content that will go out. We will go live for during all 4 days, possibly, because the Mets are definitely going to be making a lot of moves. And we'll see what is in store for the Thursday podcast coming up. Either way, I hope everybody had a good holiday. Hopefully everybody is ready for what is about to unfold this offseason, because we are getting into the big meat of things. The winter meetings is when it starts to get a little crazy. But even with that, before the winter meetings even starts, the Mets have made more moves than I thought they have. Speaking of the external moves, let me just say real quick, Ryan Helsley is going to the O's. So 2 years, $28 million. Good luck to him. Obviously didn't work out here. Speaking of not working out, Cedric Mullins, 1 year deal. He signed with the Tampa Bay Rays. So best of luck to him. And also they announced the non-tenders. Max Krenick was non-tendered by the team, as well as Danny Young, who also signed a 1 year deal with the Braves, which I think he was with before he signed with the Mets. So he is gone. And David Peterson, Luis Torrens, Francisco Alvarez, Reed Garrett, and Huskar Brazaban all will be tendered contracts to avoid arbitration. And you also had Tyrone Taylor already settle at $3.8 million. Either way, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. If you were here for a little bit, if you guys were here for a lot, we had a lot to catch up on, like I said. Lots of news to catch up on, obviously, with us missing a show last week because of Thanksgiving. So hope you guys enjoyed the entire conversation. Shout out to everybody in the comments, everyone watching live, watching on playback. You want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel. Turn on those post notifications. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok. More content over there. Follow all of us individually. Regularly, we are live at Thursday at 6, like we are today. There could be some changes to that schedule. We don't know, but we're going to have to figure it out over in these next few weeks. But either way, we will let you guys know if there is any scheduling update for our podcast, for our live stream, so you guys can come in here, have a live conversation with us. Either way, let's go Mets. Still plenty of work that has to be done in the offseason, and it is about to get very, very exciting and very, very crazy in this offseason this week with the winter meetings coming up. So when that does happen, we will see you guys next time.